Why do we keep giving pieces of ourselves away just to feel accepted? Why does approval feel safer than self-respect? So many people don't notice when it starts. You soften your opinions. You explain yourself too much. You stay quiet when something feels wrong. Little by little, you trade honesty for belonging and comfort for dignity. The harsh truth is this: the more approval you seek, the less you value yourself. Every time you look outside for validation, you teach your mind that your worth is negotiable. Over time, this creates attachment, anxiety, and a quiet fear of being alone. Stoic philosophy saw this danger long before modern life amplified it. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that peace never comes from controlling others, only from mastering our own judgments. When your self-worth depends on reactions, you give your inner freedom away. This video is not here to comfort you, it is here to clarify you. Today, you'll learn 8 Stoic habits that teach you how to love yourself without approval, without attachment, and without needing anyone to choose you. Stay with me. This is where self-respect begins. Habit 1. Stop negotiating. Your worth, most people don't realize when they start bargaining with their own value. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens quietly. You tolerate a little disrespect. You explain yourself when you shouldn't. You accept less effort than you give, all because a part of you is afraid of losing connection. At first, it feels harmless. You tell yourself you're being understanding, flexible, mature. But deep down, something feels off. Each time you justify why you deserve basic respect, you send a dangerous message to your mind. My worth is conditional. And once worth becomes negotiable, peace disappears. Stoic philosophy is ruthless on this point. Your value is not something to be proven, defended, or debated. Epictetus warned that when you seek external confirmation, you hand over control of your inner life. The moment you need someone else to agree with your worth, you've already surrendered it. Think about how often you over-explain. Long messages, careful wording, replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much or not enough. That constant need to be understood is not humility. It's self-betrayal disguised as politeness. A Stoic understands this. Clarity comes from conviction, not explanation. When you stop negotiating your worth, something uncomfortable happens. People may pull away, some may misunderstand you, others may label you as cold or distant. But what's really happening is this: the people who benefited from your self-doubt are losing access to you. This habit is not about becoming arrogant, it's about becoming grounded. A Stoic doesn't inflate his ego, but he also refuses to shrink himself to be digestible. He knows that self-worth is an internal standard, not a social agreement. Practically, this means learning to pause before you explain. It means answering questions without defending your existence. It means letting silence replace justification. When someone challenges your boundaries, you don't rush to convince them. You observe. You choose whether engagement is even necessary. Ask yourself one honest question today. Where am I trying to be accepted at the cost of my self-respect? The answer may sting, but it will also free you. Because the moment you stop negotiating your worth, you reclaim something priceless: inner authority. You no longer need approval to feel solid. You no longer chase reassurance to feel safe. Your value is not up for discussion. And the sooner you live that truth, the stronger you become. Habit 2. Detach from outcomes, not from values. One of the deepest reasons people struggle to love themselves is their attachment to outcomes. You give love hoping it will be returned. You act kindly expecting appreciation. You stay loyal, believing it will secure connection. When the outcome doesn't arrive, disappointment quickly turns into self-doubt. Stoicism teaches a hard but liberating truth. Outcomes are never fully yours. Only your intentions, choices, and actions belong to you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to focus on what depended on him and to release everything else. When you confuse effort with entitlement, suffering becomes inevitable. Detaching from outcomes does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means acting from principle rather than expectation. You tell the truth because honesty matters, not because it guarantees approval. You show care because it reflects your character, not because it obligates others to stay. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Most emotional pain comes from hidden contracts. You do something good and silently expect a certain response. When reality breaks that contract, resentment grows. A Stoic dissolves these contracts before they form. He acts with clarity, then lets go. This habit requires emotional maturity. It asks you to notice when your peace is tied to results you cannot control. Did they respond? Did they choose you? Did they appreciate your effort? These questions seem harmless, but they quietly place your self-worth outside yourself. Practicing detachment looks simple, but it is demanding. It means doing the right thing even when no reward follows. It means accepting rejection without rewriting your value. It means allowing outcomes to unfold without chasing, fixing, or forcing them. Over time, this discipline builds quiet confidence. You stop performing for reactions and start living from alignment. Your actions feel lighter, cleaner, and more honest. Even when things fail, you don't collapse inward. You remain intact because your identity was never attached to the result. This is strength without bitterness, clarity without emotional withdrawal. Try this. Before you act, ask yourself one question. Would I still do this if the outcome were uncertain? If the answer is no, pause. Recenter on your values. Act only when the action itself feels aligned. When you detach from outcomes, you regain emotional stability. You stop riding highs and lows based on other people's choices. You remain steady even when things don't go your way. This is how self-love becomes disciplined, not emotional. You act with integrity. You release the rest. In that release, you feel free. Habit 3. Choose self-respect over being liked. One of the hardest habits to build is choosing self-respect over being liked. Not because it is complicated, but because it goes against a lifetime of conditioning. From a young age, many of us learned that approval meant safety, being agreeable meant belonging, saying yes meant staying connected. But every time you choose to be liked at the cost of honesty, something inside you fractures. You feel it in small moments. When you laugh at a joke that crosses your boundary. When you stay silent instead of speaking the truth. When you agree just to avoid tension. Each time, self-respect quietly steps back. Stoicism teaches that self-respect is not arrogance, it is alignment. Marcus Aurelius wrote about living in agreement with nature, meaning your actions must align with your values, not with the shifting moods of others. When you abandon that alignment to gain approval, you create inner conflict. Being liked is external. Self-respect is internal. One depends on opinions you cannot control. The other depends on choices you make every day. Yet most people sacrifice the second to protect the first, and then wonder why they feel empty, resentful, or unseen. Choosing self-respect often brings discomfort. Some people won't like your boundaries. Others may call you selfish, distant, or difficult. This reaction can feel painful, especially if you've built your identity around being agreeable. But what they are really reacting to is your refusal to abandon yourself. This habit requires courage. It means allowing disapproval without immediately trying to fix it. It means letting others feel uncomfortable while you remain grounded. It means understanding that not everyone who leaves your life is a loss. Practically, this looks like saying no without over-explaining. It looks like pausing before agreeing. It looks like checking in with your values before responding. Ask yourself, if no one approved of this choice, would I still respect myself for making it? When self-respect becomes your priority, relationships begin to change. Some will fade, others will deepen. The ones that remain will be built on authenticity rather than performance. You no longer show up as a version designed to be accepted, but as a person anchored in truth. This is where real confidence begins. Not loud, not aggressive, but quiet and unshakable. Because when you respect yourself, you no longer need permission to exist, and that freedom is worth far more than being liked. Habit 4. Practice emotional detachment. Daily. Most people believe emotional detachment means becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. In reality, the opposite is true. Emotional detachment is not about suppressing feelings, but about refusing to be controlled by them. Without this skill, your inner world becomes a battlefield shaped by every message, reaction, and tone around you. Think about how often your mood shifts because of something small, a delayed reply, a careless comment, a change in energy you can't explain. Suddenly, your thoughts spiral and your sense of stability disappears. This is attachment at work. You're not reacting to reality, but to the meaning you've assigned to it. Stoic philosophy teaches that emotions are signals, not commands. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Emotional detachment begins the moment you learn to pause between stimulus and response. That pause is where freedom lives. This habit is built through daily practice, not dramatic moments. When a feeling arises, you do not fight it. You name it. You observe it. You allow it to exist without letting it dictate your behavior. Sadness, fear, frustration, and longing are all temporary visitors. None of them are your identity. A simple Stoic practice is the pause, name, release method. Pause your reaction. Name the emotion honestly. Then release the need to act on it immediately. This small gap prevents emotional impulses from turning into regretful decisions. Detachment becomes especially powerful in relationships. When someone pulls away, you resist the urge to chase. When tension appears, you resist the urge to explain. Instead, you remain present and grounded. You respond from character, not insecurity. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you clear. You can still care deeply, but you no longer cling. You can feel pain without being consumed by it. Over time, this builds emotional resilience that no external situation can easily break. Practicing emotional detachment daily rewires your inner stability. You stop outsourcing your peace to other people's behavior. Your emotional state becomes something you manage, not something you defend. Ask yourself today, what emotion am I letting lead me? Awareness alone begins the shift. When feelings pass and character remains, you realize something profound. You are not your emotions. You are the one who chooses how to act in their presence. That choice is the foundation of self-mastery. And self-mastery is the deepest form of self-love. Habit 5. Stop chasing validation. Build inner standards. Chasing validation feels natural in a world built on attention. Likes, praise, quick replies, and recognition quietly train the mind to look outward for confirmation. At first it feels motivating, but over time it becomes exhausting because your sense of worth is always waiting for someone else to press approval. This habit keeps you dependent. When approval rises, you feel confident. When it disappears, you doubt yourself. Stoicism offers a different path. Build inner standards that no opinion can touch. Inner standards are personal rules rooted in virtue, not popularity. They answer a single question at the end of each day. Did I act with integrity, courage, and restraint? When this becomes your measure, external validation loses its power. Most people never develop these standards. Instead, they absorb expectations from family, culture, and social pressure. The result is a life spent performing rather than living, reacting rather than choosing. A Stoic deliberately defines what matters. This may include honesty over comfort, discipline over impulse, and self-respect over approval. These standards are not announced or defended. They live quietly, especially when no one is watching. To practice this habit, begin with a simple evening audit. Ask yourself whether your actions reflected your values today, not whether they were praised, rewarded, or noticed, just whether they were right. When you stop chasing validation, your nervous system calms. You no longer scan rooms for approval or fear rejection. You move through life guided by an internal compass, steady and self-directed. This shift is subtle but profound. You begin to trust yourself again. And when you trust yourself, you finally stop asking the world who you are. That silence is not emptiness. It is strength. From it, self-love becomes consistent, disciplined, and unshaken. You answer to your conscience, not the crowd, and that alignment becomes your peace. Build your standards carefully. Protect them daily. Let them guide decisions when emotions rise and opinions shift. In doing so, you reclaim authority over your inner life and stop outsourcing your worth forever. This is how approval loses its grip. Not through rebellion, but through clarity, not by rejecting others, but by choosing yourself without apology. When your standards are internal, love becomes stable. And stability, more than praise, is what the Stoics believed made a life worth living. From this place, you no longer chase validation because you already stand firmly on your own ground. Nothing external decides you when your inner standards are already set within. Habit 6. Accept being misunderstood. One of the deepest attachments people carry is the need to be understood. Not seen, not respected, but fully understood. When others misinterpret your intentions, question your choices, or reduce you to a false story, something inside tightens. The instinct is immediate. Explain, clarify, correct, defend. Stoicism teaches a harder truth. Being misunderstood is not a problem to fix. It is a reality to accept. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste life arguing with opinions he could not control. The need to be understood often hides fear. Fear of rejection, fear of isolation, fear of standing alone in your values. Every explanation you give to protect your image hands power outward. You begin shaping your truth to fit someone else's perception. Slowly, you stop acting from conviction and start acting from anxiety. This is where self-respect erodes, not through conflict, but through constant self-editing. Accepting misunderstanding requires emotional maturity. It means allowing others to be wrong about you without rushing to rescue your reputation. It means trusting your character enough to let time and consistency speak. The Stoic knows that truth does not need constant defense. This habit feels uncomfortable at first. Silence can feel like weakness when you are used to explaining yourself. But silence, when chosen consciously, is strength. It creates space between impulse and response. It protects your energy. It keeps you aligned with what matters. In practice, this looks like resisting the urge to send long messages. It looks like answering briefly instead of thoroughly. It looks like walking away from conversations that demand justification rather than understanding. You're not avoiding accountability. You're refusing unnecessary negotiation. Over time, something shifts. The people who require constant explanation fade away. The ones who respect consistency remain. Your nervous system calms because you are no longer performing for acceptance. Ask yourself this question honestly. Am I explaining to be understood or explaining to be approved? The difference reveals everything. When you accept being misunderstood, you free yourself from emotional labor that never ends. You stop chasing clarity in other people's minds and return to clarity within your own. You do not need everyone to understand you to live with integrity. Peace does not come from agreement. It comes from alignment, and alignment is something no misunderstanding can take away. This discipline strengthens independence, deepens self-trust, and sharpens boundaries, reminding you that your worth is not a group decision, but a quiet commitment you honor daily through deliberate inner choice. Habit 7. Train voluntary discomfort to break attachment. Voluntary discomfort is one of the most misunderstood Stoic practices. People assume it is punishment or denial, but its purpose is liberation. When your comfort controls you, attachment grows quietly. You become afraid of hunger, boredom, silence, and inconvenience, and anything you fear begins to own you. Stoics trained the opposite. Seneca deliberately slept on the floor and ate simple food, not because he enjoyed suffering, but because he wanted to remember he could endure it. Voluntary discomfort breaks the illusion that you need constant ease to be okay. Attachment forms when comfort becomes a requirement. You cling to routines, people, and environments because they soothe you. The moment they disappear, anxiety rushes in. This habit teaches your nervous system that discomfort is survivable, temporary, and even strengthening. Training discomfort does not mean extreme behavior. It means intentional, controlled challenges that remind you of your inner strength. Cold showers, brief fasting, solitude, walking instead of convenience, choosing silence over distraction. Small acts, repeated consistently. Each time you choose discomfort willingly, you reclaim authority over your impulses. You prove to yourself that cravings are suggestions, not commands. This creates emotional independence. You stop needing conditions to feel stable. This practice also dissolves attachment to people. When you are comfortable being uncomfortable, you stop clinging out of fear. You can let others come and go without panic. You no longer stay in situations just to avoid loneliness. There is a quiet confidence that forms here. You begin to trust yourself under pressure. When life becomes difficult, you do not collapse because you have trained for difficulty. You have rehearsed loss in small doses. Start gently. Choose one voluntary discomfort per day. Not to impress anyone, not to post online, only to remind yourself that you are capable of more than comfort. Notice how fear softens when you stop obeying it. Ask yourself this question: what am I avoiding that is keeping me dependent? The answer often reveals where attachment lives. Voluntary discomfort is not about toughness, it is about freedom. Freedom from impulses, freedom from fear, freedom from needing life to be easy in order to be peaceful. When you no longer cling to comfort, you no longer cling to people, outcomes, or identities built on ease. You stand on something deeper. This habit reshapes self-love into self-trust. You learn that you can handle hunger, silence, rejection, and uncertainty without abandoning yourself. And when you know that, attachment loses its grip. You are no longer held hostage by comfort. You are free. Freedom begins when discomfort becomes familiar, and familiar discomfort transforms fear into strength, teaching you that self-mastery grows where avoidance once ruled within your disciplined inner life. Habit 8. Anchor your identity. In virtue, not relationships, many people don't realize how much of their identity is tied to who chooses them. A relationship begins, and suddenly life has meaning. A connection fades, and everything feels empty. When your sense of self depends on being wanted, attachment becomes inevitable, and self-love becomes fragile. Stoicism offers a radical alternative. Your identity is not built on roles, titles, or relationships. It is anchored in virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that no one can take away a good character. Relationships may end, people may leave, but virtue remains untouched. When identity is rooted in relationships, fear follows. You fear abandonment. You fear disappointing others. You fear being alone because alone feels like nothing. But when identity is rooted in virtue, solitude becomes grounding instead of threatening. You know who you are, regardless of who stays. Virtue, in Stoic terms, is simple but demanding. It is honesty when lying would be easier. Discipline when giving up feels tempting. Courage when approval disappears. These qualities are always within reach, no matter your circumstances. Anchoring your identity in virtue changes how you show up in relationships. You no longer mold yourself to be chosen. You remain consistent, whether admired or ignored. You stop sacrificing values to preserve connection, because connection is no longer the source of your worth. This habit is deeply stabilizing. When a relationship shifts or ends, grief may still come, but collapse does not. You feel the loss without losing yourself. You remain whole because your foundation was internal, not relational. Practically, this means defining who you choose to be, independent of anyone else's response. Choose one virtue to anchor into daily: integrity, patience, courage, restraint. Then measure your day by how faithfully you lived it, not by who responded or stayed. Over time, this practice creates unshakable self-respect. You stop asking, "Who am I to them?" and start asking, "Did I live according to my values today?" That question restores dignity and clarity. When identity is internal, attachment weakens. Love becomes a choice, not a necessity. Relationships become additions, not lifelines. You can care deeply without clinging because your core remains intact. This is the deepest form of self-love Stoicism offers. Not affection toward the self, but loyalty to your character. A commitment to live well, regardless of external circumstances. When your identity is anchored in virtue, nothing essential can be taken from you. And in that certainty, you finally stand free. Free to love without attachment. Free to exist without approval. Free to be whole, even when you are alone. Today, we walked through 8 Stoic habits that quietly change how you relate to yourself and the world. Not by chasing confidence, but by rebuilding self-respect. Not by seeking love, but by removing the need for approval and attachment. You learned how to stop negotiating your worth, detach from outcomes without abandoning your values, and choose self-respect over being liked. You saw why emotional detachment is not coldness, but clarity. Why inner standards matter more than validation. Why being misunderstood is not a weakness, and why discomfort, when chosen deliberately, frees you from fear. Finally, you learn to anchor your identity in virtue, not in who stays or leaves. These habits are not ideas to admire, they are practices to live. Start small. Choose one habit and apply it today. Notice where you explain yourself too much, where you chase reassurance, where attachment quietly controls your choices. Awareness is the first act of discipline. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video brought you clarity, consider sharing it with someone who may need it. And if you're ready to continue building inner strength through Stoic wisdom, subscribe and stay with the channel. Until next time, remember this: self-love is not something you feel, it is something you practice. Daily, quietly, and without permission. I'll see you in the next video.